In 2019, Spain was the second most visited country in the world. An incredible 83.7 million tourists entered the country, looking to soak up its vibrant culture, take in its beautiful sights, and relax on one of its many picturesque beaches. There is certainly some peace of mind as a tourist in Spain. Its crime rates are fairly low in comparison to other European countries, often making it feel like a safe environment. Like every country, though, Spain has its dark side. In today's episode, we will be exploring that very side as we shed light on three chilling mysteries. Man of Somiedo. On January 11th, 2015, a group of hikers walking by the AS-227 road, less than a mile from the town of Puerto de Somiedo, discovered the dead body of a man in the nearby undergrowth. Investigators arrived promptly on the scene and found the body wrapped inside a blanket, missing one leg and with no clothing. Upon first glance, there was some indication that he had been taken care of during his final years. His hair had been combed, his beard had been trimmed, and he was clean with clear skin. This made it confusing to investigators when they noticed his missing leg. Initially, they suspected that John Doe's end had been a violent one. However, it was later determined during the post-mortem that the man's leg had likely gone missing as a result of scavenging animals. The blanket he was found with was analyzed, and it was deemed to have been made in the 1950s, carried by only 2 stores in the entire country. Receipt records hadn't been kept, however, meaning the authorities were unable to trace the purchaser. John Doe is described as being incredibly short, at just 4'5". He had a beard and was likely between the ages of 45 and 60. His body appeared dangerously thin, with one investigator noting that it resembled one of the bodies from the Holocaust. He weighed just 77 pounds. His limbs and fingers were described as being disproportionately long, while his head was unusually small. He also suffered from pectus carinatum, or pigeon chest, a deformity where overgrowth of the cartilage between the ribs and sternum causes the chest to stick out unusually. Furthermore, John Doe's upper back was hunched. There was briefly some speculation that the man suffered from Marfan syndrome, a genetic disorder resulting in an abnormally curved spine, incredibly flexible joints, and long arms, legs, fingers, and toes. Sufferers are often tall and thin, and complications with the heart and aorta can arise from the condition. However, as John Doe was exceptionally short in height, they began to theorize that his growth had been halted by chronic malnutrition. The autopsy showed that John Doe's nutrition had been satisfactory. He was not malnourished as had been originally theorized. It was also concretely determined through DNA testing that he didn't have Marfan, but suffered from cocaine syndrome, a rare genetic disorder often featuring growth disorders, intellectual deficits, neuromotor difficulties, and impaired vision and hearing. Children with this condition generally look older than they are and often don't make it to age 12. There are several variants of cocaine syndrome. Some adults live to their 20s or even 30s, while others with a milder, slower version of the condition can live to their 40s and 50s. John Doe's odd appearance now made sense, with his strange features lining up with the diagnosis. His cause of death was established as a heart attack. This wasn't uncommon in those with the condition, as it can affect the heart and the aorta. The rarity of John Doe's condition led investigators to believe that it wouldn't take them long to close the case, but they were wrong. They visited Puerto de Somiedo, the nearest town to where the body was found, but found no clues to his identity. Searching further afield yielded no answers either, not even at hospitals and housing facilities. Next, detectives looked into birth records and spoke with gynecologists and midwives who may have helped deliver the baby, but this turned up no new leads. They then attempted to look for women who may have worked as unlicensed rural midwives around his estimated time of birth, but found nothing. Another dead end came when they reached out to construction companies, looking for builders who may have created a basement space or a false wall to another room inside a home. Law enforcement began to put together some theories in the absence of answers. They suspected John Doe was from somewhere much further than Somiedo, or that he had been hidden by his family, possibly due to shame or a fear of judgment, and that nobody knew of his existence because he had been locked away for most of his life, being cared for but unacknowledged by those outside the family. As he was likely born between 1955 and 1970, there was also some speculation that he had been born to a single mother. Spain's government was still deeply religious at the time, and an unwed mother would have been met with disapproval and difficulties. If John Doe's mother had been unwed at the time of his birth, she likely hid her pregnancy from everyone and delivered the baby alone or with someone she trusted. To avoid conflict or community backlash, she likely kept the child hidden. Investigators theorized that John Doe had been left somewhere he could easily be found. Had he been left further down the slope, his body likely would have become covered in snow and never been recovered. Authorities believe that whoever had cared for John Doe wanted him to have a proper burial. He was buried with a blank headstone at a local cemetery. While his DNA has been entered into several databases, some of which are international, the real identity of the man of Sumi Ito remains a mystery. Malin Rodriguez. In Majorca on December 2nd, 2013, 15-year-old Malin Rodriguez awoke at 6 a.m. and proceeded to carry out her normal morning routine. She got dressed, had breakfast, and left for school. When the day was over, she hopped onto a bus to get home before realizing that she had left her keys in the house. Since her father was at work and her brother was out, she got off the bus and called her boyfriend, 17-year-old Daniel, asking if she could come and have lunch with him. His parents gave the pair the okay, and she left a message on her father's voicemail, letting him know where she was. Following this, Malin began the journey to Daniel's on her skateboard. She was around 2.5 miles from his home, and many witnesses placed her on the cycle path that day. CCTV showed her at 3:51 p.m. skating towards the village of Sun Farah. 300 meters ahead of her, at a petrol station, was another CCTV camera still on Marlin's route. But the 15-year-old never passed it. She vanished in the section of the cycle path between the two cameras. When Marlin didn't show up to Daniel's house, he and his parents became concerned. Soon, a missing persons report was filed. Like the case of Manuela and Virginia, though, investigators seemed to shrug off the concerns of the 15-year-old's loved ones. They believed she was a runaway teenager and refused to begin looking for her until 48 hours had passed. When they finally began to investigate, they found that her mobile phone had run out of battery, so they were unable to trace her this way. An examination of the CCTV from the petrol station, which Marlin should have passed but failed to do so, further revealed that the teenager's younger brother had been cycling nearby. In fact, the two should have passed one another as they were riding in the opposite direction, but they never did. Her brother, Bruno, never saw her. Over the next few weeks, authorities combed through wooded areas in search of Marlin, using mountain rescue specialists, agents from the Civil Guard, local police, and firefighters. Nearby coastal cliffs were checked and divers took to the lakes at a neighboring golf course. No sign of the 15-year-old was discovered. Law enforcement theories about what became of Marlin seem to split into two camps. The camp that thinks she ran away from home, and the camp that believes she met with foul play. By all accounts, Marlin had previously lived a very troubled life. Originally from Argentina, she, her brother, and her parents relocated to Mallorca when Marlin was 5. She was described as outgoing and independent and was a keen rock music enthusiast who hoped to go to art school and dreamed of one day opening her own tattoo studio. However, her family life was heavily troubled. When her parents divorced in 2006, just 3 years after the move to Spain, Marlin and Bruno began living with their father. Marlin's relationship with her mother was said to be difficult, but she was no better off with her father, who was sometimes physically abusive. At some point, Marlin began experimenting with drugs. When she was just 13, her father, Alfonso, discovered her undressed in bed with a boy, and she was horrifically beaten by him, to the point that she had to be hospitalized. Several years later, though, she stopped using drugs and began to take care of herself, eventually meeting Daniel, an aspiring musician whom she began dating. Daniel told investigators that in the days before her disappearance, Marlin had been frequently seen crying and had made an appointment with the school counselor the following day. Her friends backed up these statements. This led to some speculation that she was so troubled she decided to leave everything behind. Investigators who believed she met with foul play. However, drew this conclusion from information which indicated that her father was in business with people who were part of organized crime. The son of a drug trafficker he knew offered €3,500 in exchange for the whereabouts of Marlon, but this failed to produce any leads. There are some allegations online that the man who offered the reward began to distance himself from Alfonso afterwards. Her mother, Natalia, was on a trip to Thailand at the time of her daughter's disappearance. In the years since, she has repeatedly voiced her disappointment and frustration with the civil guard for being unable to find any answers in the case. She noted that while her daughter was stubborn, she was also mature. She believes that Marlon was taken by somebody she knew. In the decades since, Marlon went missing. No trace of her has ever been found. At the time of her disappearance, 15-year-old Marlon Rodriguez wore red trainers, ripped jeans, and a plaid shirt with a t-shirt underneath. She also wore a denim jacket. When she went missing, she weighed 121 pounds and stood at 5 feet 3 inches. She is described as having long, curly brown hair and brown eyes. If you have any information about Marlon's disappearance, you can call the local missing persons group on +3 464 265 0775. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own theories and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.